So let's try this two-sided limit idea with a more complicated function. I'm going to have f of x equal, and I need different formulas depending on what side of the break I'm on, since I'm using a piecewise function. I'm going to break at x equals 0. So for x strictly less than 0, I will use the formula f of x equals x squared. For x greater than or equal to 0, I'm going to use the sine function. So I could try this by drawing a graph or having a computer graph the function for me. But using the idea from my previous video, I can do all my work on the scratch paper without actually having to consult anything. Again, it's very nice to be able to imagine what the graph of this function would look like. I encourage you to maybe spend 30 seconds here to imagine what the graph of this function would look like. But it's enough to check the one-sided limits. Now, since x squared is a polynomial, we know we're allowed to substitute in to calculate limits. And I told you last time that the sine function works that way as well. The only interesting limit for this function is what happens when x tends to 0. So I'm going to check what is the limit as x approaches 0 from the left of this function. I'm also going to see what happens as x approaches 0 from the right of the same function. If both of these limits exist and they're both the same number, then the limit of this the two-sided limit will also exist. On the left, I can use the function x squared, the formula x squared, but because this function f and this function x squared, they give the same values there. And I know since x squared is a polynomial, I can just substitute in x equals 0, and I get 0 for the value of that limit. On the right, I've got the limit as x approaches 0 from the right. Again, I'm going to use the formula for sine of x. That'll be much easier to work with here. And I know that I can substitute in and say that x just equals 0. That's allowed by this formula. And the sine function is one of the functions that I can substitute values in when I'm taking limits. Sine of 0 is 0. So the left side limit is this 0. The right side limit is also a 0. They are the same value. So that means the limit of this function, x goes to 0 of f of x. This is the two-sided limit because I'm not specifying direction. This limit is equal to 0.